gone now. 10:21 News Talk 106 to 108, and that is the Gin Blossoms and Hey Jalsy from them. There's a man, Domhnall Ó Lubhla. He was a famous Irish teacher and a founder of Closh na Bhín, and he passed away in March. Since then, past students of his have started to speak out about how he sexually abused them. They brought forward cases about him going back years, but to no avail so far. One of them, Gearóid Ó Cochubhair, joins me now. Gearóid, good morning. How are you today?
Good morning, Tom.
I was just talking to you there off mic, and we were talking about how life can take you down different paths, and you and I went to the Gaeltacht at similar times in our life. I had probably the happiest time of my life in the Gaeltacht. You had a very different experience. Tell me about it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose, yeah, you had the happiest time of your life. I could say that for a lot of the time that I spent in the Gaeltacht, I had a very happy time, you know. I suppose that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to sort of deal with it and deal with what happened, because it's overlaid by so many other events and activities and things that go on in your childhood that I suppose it makes it that much easier to bury things that are
Right. So what happened with him, this man, exactly?
Well, I suppose the story isn't unusual in so far as it's similar to lots of other cases where, I was groomed from the age of 13. I suppose I had previous difficulties in school, so, and difficulties with teachers. So, it was, I suppose, easy for a teacher to begin to show some interest in me and, start to get that kind of really, positive interaction and sort of affirmation and he observed me, obviously, and he picked out my talents and he encouraged them, and he brought me to Galway, one day. And
what age were you at this point?
13. Yeah.
Right.
And I was, I'm still a creative person, but at that time I was into drawing and crafts and all the kinds of things. And he wanted me to set up a group within the college. So we went to get materials and all the rest of it. We had a great day in Galway City, and we went for, a meal, and, a 3-course meal in a hotel in Galway, isn't sort of the thing that, a young 13-year-old in the early 70s would have been used to. So it was all very kind of very pleasant, and we made our way back to Rusmuck, and but it wasn't a straight journey. We had lots of, and by the time we got so far, I didn't really know where we were. We ended up in a house, and it was decided that we would stay there for the night, And
how did he manage to organise a situation where you were away from your parents with him?
Well, I was on the course, you see.
Right.
And he was in charge of the course. So,
okay.
So I suppose that's how it was managed. But I mean, subsequently, yes, he did. He, what I would say, infiltrated my family. He got my parents on side. He groomed my family.
Right. That first night, he'd organised that you stayed in one house.
Yeah, in one house.
And then there seems to be almost a recurring theme with some of these stories that there was only one bed.
There was only one bed. Yeah.
And when that started, did you have any idea what was going on?
Not really. I suppose, I was confused. But as regards, sharing a bed, I wasn't that concerned, But when the assault had taken place, yes, I was very, very confused, frightened. And, as a child of 13, you don't really know what's going on, because you're thinking that, is this part of the adult world, and it's something, I have to learn about or something. I don't know. I mean, you just don't know. And because it's not spoken about, the following day, it was like nothing had happened, and we're back to sort of, all kinds of really, exciting activities, and I was back in the college, and I was really enjoying myself there, so you kind of learn to separate, and that's how it kind of, like it followed on from there for about 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah. And in the wintertime as well, because he had built this rapport with my parents, he used to be able to call to the house, and he'd be going to Connemara, on some pretext, he'd say, Gearóid will come with me for the weekend,
How did you feel about it?
Oh, how did I feel? I don't know. This is the question that really perplexes me, and still does, As a child, I suppose it's easier, because you can, I don't know, there's maybe so many other things going on. It's easier to sort of package it away. I mean, I've described it before as it's like you kind of swallow a little worm, and it's there, and it remains dormant, or it hibernates, and now and again it surfaces, but it's nibbling a little bit, Did
you never tell anyone at this point when you're going home?
No, you don't tell anybody, No. I mean, the shame, maybe not so much the shame at that age, it's the fear at that age, you couldn't,
What were you afraid of?
I suppose the fear is that you're the person who had done something wrong, it wasn't something that was talked about. I mean, I have children myself now, I know the way, all of these things have emerged in the media that, children are much more savvy about, all of this. At that time, like if you think about it, the word sex, wasn't mentioned, we didn't talk about things like that, and so that was what made it very difficult.
Did anybody suspect?
No.
No. Isn't that incredible?
No. On the contrary, people's attitude was that this was something of benefit to me, and
that this relationship
with this man who was, very, very well respected. You have to remember that this was a man who moved in circles with politicians, politicians on all sides, Republicans, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael. He was, religious, and I suppose revered amongst the Irish language community.
He was a very powerful,
very powerful man.
And in the Irish language world, there's many people who've been tutored by him. Many people speak Irish because of him.
Yeah, I mean, if you look around and you think about all the leaders, or a lot of the leaders in Irish language organisations, in media organisations, in here in News Talk, I met somebody this morning. They have been very, very successful people who have emerged from Closh.
There have been comparisons with Jimmy Savile because of the fact that he's such a powerful man, and he was also in the media. People knew of him. But with that, and it'd be similar here, people are gobsmacked as to how there weren't rumours or stories or stuff going around. More people, if a child came home, and you think some parents must have seen something different about the child in some circumstances, that something wasn't done.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and again, you see, because you don't talk about it, you don't talk about it with your peers. So it just remains, and that little worm starts to wiggle, and for me, it wasn't really until the early 90s, it was the Brendan Smith case, suddenly you begin to sort of think, God, things happened to me. And it was also, I mean, at that time, I was, I was dealing with all kinds of personal issues that I just couldn't fathom. I was having panic attacks. I was full of anxiety. Some people react in different ways. For me, it was to achieve. It was always about if I can prove that I'm better, or I can achieve something. And I was quite I had a very successful life and career, and it was all driven by ambition, and now I feel that was what it was about. It was about proving to myself, that but all the time I was better than this shame and guilt,
All the time, this worm, as you describe it, is inside you, and particularly as abuse scandals are starting to break.
It breaks, and then I started going to my my GP. I went for all kinds.
Who was the first person you told?
first person I told would have been a psychiatrist in 1996-7. Prior to that, I did, I had all the discussions with my GP in relation to the symptoms.
Yeah.
And she had sort of sent me to, stress clinics and so on. But it was eventually when I sat with the psychiatrist, and it took over a year for the penny to drop, really,
That what had happened to you.
That what had happened to me was so wrong and was so horrific. And I suppose I also say when I try to explain it, it's not the only reason, but one of the key, points at which it emerged to me was my own son was 11 at that stage. And I began to sort of feel that, if what had happened to me happened to him.
Yeah. Your blood would boil.
Oh, yeah. That was fury.
Anger.
That was fury. That was anger.
Right.
That was the breaking point,
Yeah.
And almost immediately, things emerged from that. That was the beginning of a process, and actually it's the beginning of a very difficult process. Because what do you do? I spoke to my wife.
What was that like?
She was the first person.
That must have been a hard conversation. What was that like?
It was a very difficult conversation, yeah. But I suppose I have a very strong and loving relationship with my wife. She's a wonderful person, She's kind of been my rock through all of that, She knew the man very well also, so she had also attended Cochubhair,
Yeah.
So so the support was really there, and I suppose it was within a couple of weeks I had decided, yes, I have to, I went to Cochubhair, and that was the first complaint in 1997. And to be fair to Cochubhair, that was acted on within days, They went to the guards and they made the report, and that was the beginning of the first investigation, and that was an outing of him.
Nothing came of that, did it?
Nothing came of it, but certain things did. I mean, at least the rumours came out. His wife was aware. He was ostracised from.
Was he stopped?
No, he wasn't stopped because he wasn't stopped because the case fell apart.
Was he still in a position where he could abuse?
He was certainly. He wasn't in a position within Cochubhair, but he remained. I suppose involved with groups that were dealing with children. But we did follow him. And I have to again give credit to my wife for this, because she was the one who was kind of dogged in her. Or just pursuing of him to make sure where was he living, what was he doing, and so
that was 97, 98 charges, but it's still
2002.
Somebody tried to take a civil case, wasn't it? What happened there?
Well, 2002, the case, the criminal case, folded because of evidence that got lost, and there are questions about that, but. Lots of questions, but in and around the same time, a civil case was taken, and the civil case ran right up until 2009, and was finally up for mention in court in 2011.
It all seems very slow.
Oh, extremely slow, yeah.
And during all this time, you have to wonder, was he in a position to abuse other children?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you have to. Yeah. Well, he had written a book. He was, the straw, I suppose, that really brought it to another level for me was when I had discovered that he had written this book, and he was hawking it around schools and in and out, selling this book.
His belief,
and it built. I go back to the worm. The worm for me was turning and eating. And that's why I described it as a worm, because it's in the gut that you feel this. And as an adult, it's very different, you're obviously, a reasonably intelligent man, I could understand all of this, but still I couldn't I couldn't bring myself to deal with the shame and the guilt that I was, that I was covering, and even though my wife was aware, and certain, a couple of very close friends were aware, it was still, still eating. I don't know if these kind of things ever kind of leave you, but
is it still very hard to talk about?
Yes, yeah. I mean, this time last year, I had a very serious kind of, I suppose, crash in my life where I was, I was hospitalized, and it was extremely traumatic. But it was probably the best thing that happened to me, because it was finally being dealt with, and I had lots of professional help and lots and lots of really good support, and it's because of that I decided I have to do something, and as soon as I was strong enough, I got back on the case, and I was sending FOIs to Department of Education and various other people who were dealing with the time, contacting the Gardaí. I was trying to sort of get as much information as I could, and the question then for me was it something I would pursue with the Guards, or would I pursue it through the media, even though I couldn't be out there because libel laws and so on. But I contacted Justine McCarthy very soon after the Jimmy Savile case, because for me that resonated.
I would imagine it did. The idea of a very powerful figure that people are afraid to challenge and assume must be.
And I have huge admiration for Justine, the way she's.
There are calls at the moment on the strength of this for the Gardaí to review their files. Would you support that?
Yes, I mean, obviously, I would support anything that's going to bring out the truth. But for me, it's not really about that. For me, it's just about two things. It's one is to try and see can this help me to heal? And secondly, if I can heal, or if I can in any way encourage others who were affected, and there were number of about 100 has been, but it could be a lot more, but I know for a fact there are many people out there who have been seriously affected.
I mean, if you think of the pain it's caused you in your life, there could be another 100 people or more.
And I mean, in some ways, I could be described as being one of the lucky ones, because my way of dealing with it was ambition, push, achieve, and others I know, went in a very, very dark direction,
Donald, thanks very much for coming in this morning.
You're welcome.
Pleasure talking to you. I know it's not easy. And I think we'll be hearing an awful lot more about this man by the sounds of it. Thank you very much for joining us.